If I was to have been reincarnated from anyone in history, it would probably be Sir Isaac Newton. Why? Well, number one, he was just an absolutely amazing guy. Perhaps one of the greatest scientists to have ever lived. Depending on how you look at it, the greatest scientist to have ever lived, simply because of how completely out of the blue the man came. He launched science hundreds of years into the future, probably. Without him, well, anyway, the man was just absolutely amazing. I'm not going to go into all the great things about what he did, his laws of motion and the invention of calculus. What I am particularly going to talk about is what an intriguing character he was, from the perspective that not only can we look back on him as truly being one of the most monumental and extraordinary scientists of all time, but he was also very much a man of faith. And not only a man of faith, but a man of magic. Some people don't know that about him because, for the most part, they just remember him, like I said, inventing calculus and coming up with the laws of motion. But in addition to that, he was fervently interested in theology. He had a very different view than a lot of people in England at the time, and therefore he had to keep his view safe, or rather secret. And in addition, because he was an alchemist, he had to keep all of that secret. And so a lot of what he wrote, no one ever really knew about. And of course, all his alchemical writings he put into code. And there are groups of people today who are trying to decode those. Now, what I find intriguing about something like this is that modern science does have a tendency to look at people like Newton as being these perfect bastions of modern logical thinking. They are the epitome of what a scientist should be. And I completely agree. I completely and totally agree. Because to me, Newton was a man who didn't forget how incredibly important it was to continue believing in things he couldn't see. Because science isn't just about understanding what we can see. It's about believing tremendously further than we can see, and therefore being able to reach that far. All through the thousands of years that we have had of science, all the way back to the Greeks, it has always been those people who have somehow managed to think beyond modern thinking, beyond common sense, into the realms of things that were very often insane. They were highly counterintuitive. And Newton was definitely one of these people. Many of his laws couldn't really be experimented on at the time, in the same way that the Greeks had come up with many things that couldn't really be experimented on at the time. But he was able to just figure it out kind of in his imagination and with math, which is one of those incredible things that you can sort of use to delve into the mysterious nature of the universe. And the man, well, he took us leaps forward in that. But I think it is a great detriment to him, as some scientists now do, to simply decide that everything else he was fascinated with was just baloney. I don't know exactly how far he got with alchemy. None of us may ever truly know how far he got with alchemy. But the man believed in it. And this was a man who obviously truly understood the universe in a way that pretty much no one at the time did. There were very few people who even understood what he was saying when he talked about a lot of the things he discovered. It was a little more obvious what he was talking about when the things he discovered about light and the way the eye worked and the way light refracted. And all of those things they could kind of wrap their heads around. But there were a lot of things he said that there were only a handful of people that even could conceive of what he was talking about. But this man of science, delved into some really intriguing areas of the universe, not only in the way that he thought about God and the Bible and his own faith at the time, but of course these areas of what we might now call mysterious magic. And there are people who have tested some of the things that he said. He believed, for instance, and there's some great documentaries about this, and a great book, I believe it was called The Last Magician, which is a really good resource about him. But he believed that encoded in all of the Greek myths, which is where a lot of alchemy really comes from ancient Hermetica, he believes things were encoded because, of course, the gods and various heroes and such represented various elements. And so by breaking these myths apart, he said, okay, this myth is saying that you combine this element with this element, and then you heat this element, and you do this with this element, and he started breaking that apart, trying to figure out what you got. And some of these formulas do work. There are some people that have tried to reproduce some of these, I guess what you would now call chemistry experiments, which were straight out of alchemy. They were straight out of essentially mythology. Now, how far that went, like I said, I don't know. Obviously, alchemy is an incredibly deep and fascinating subject that is beyond, I think, most people, or at least its true meaning. I think that unfortunately we've come to look at it as being this just weird mystical belief system that didn't really mean anything and didn't have any real basis, regardless of the fact that it itself is the basis of modern chemistry. But the bottom line that I have with Sir Isaac Newton, and the reason that I like him so much, and I feel like I connect with him, or that he resonates with me, is this fact that to me he was this extraordinary pillar of modern science who kept one foot essentially in all three areas, you know, in the philosophy and in the theology and in the science, and didn't feel a need to separate them, which I don't think we do now. That's just my opinion, but I'm certainly hoping it's one that gets a little wider recognition soon. I'm the Urban Omnist, absolutely fascinated by guys like Sir Isaac Newton, and I'm sure many of my viewers are too. Can't wait to look through the comments. See you guys later. If I was to have been reincarnated from anyone in history, it would probably be Alfred Hitchcock. If I was to be reincarnated from anyone in history, it would probably be Yul Brynner, Mahatma Gandhi, someone who didn't have to brush their hair, basically. That would be nice. Yeah. If I was to be reincarnated from anyone in history, reincarnated, someone reincarnated to, if I was to be reincarnated to someone in the future, let's try this again. If I was to find out that I was reincarnated from anyone in history, it would probably be Ben Kingsley, but he's still alive, so that kind of ruins that one. Yep. If I was to be if I was to have been reincarnated from anyone in history, it would have been anything but a white boy with no rhythm. Trust me, I have no rhythm. People have heard me play. Let's try it again. And remember guys, none of this works without you. So, subscribe to our channel, like us on Facebook and Twitter, and above all, don't forget to send me those questions.